Alright, before we get started, the first thing I would like to do is apologize to everybody for the unconventional method I'm using for this proposal. But I actually feel like I have a very good reason for doing it this way. Well, several reasons actually. Honestly, I'm not very good at writing documents or using that sort of software. I'm good at a lot of things, but Microsoft Word is not on that list. Although my girlfriend Jody happens to be very, very good at writing this sort of thing. But unfortunately, she's also a very, very busy lady and doing very, very important work. So I'm gonna not bother her with my foolishness. And the last reason, since I'm being honest, is that I actually find written documents to be kind of soulless. And I like my work to be a little bit more meaningful than that. I have a fair amount of experience making videos for my YouTube channel, and I find it's a very decent way for me to express myself. Another reason for doing it this way is because we talked about maybe doing some demonstrations at the port, and I wanted to give a little example as to what that might look like. Well, now that the explaining is out of the way, I guess we can get started. I think I'll start by telling you a few things about myself, just so everybody has a better idea who exactly they're dealing with here. I grew up in the town of Dominion. I don't claim any particular heritage because I'm a mix of many different things, such as Belgian, Italian, and Irish. In other words, I'm just a regular old Cape Bretoner trying to get by. I worked for my uncle's business for most of my life doing concrete work and other types of construction. But what we specialized in was lifting houses, lifting up whole homes and putting foundations under them. That itself is a dying art. Well, my uncle eventually retired and shut down his business. So I spent the next few years bouncing around doing different jobs. The most notable of those jobs was I was a bartender at the Sandbar for about 5 years. That's about the same time I started getting into homesteading. I started out with a goat and a couple chickens. At the height of it, I was running a farm that included 2 cows, 12 goats, 6 sheep, 18 pigs, and meat chickens and laying chickens. During this time, I also practiced many other back-to-earth type skills, many of which I have examples of on my YouTube channel if you happen to be interested. My YouTube channel I'm actually pretty proud of. In the past few years, I gained over 700 subscribers. And my most popular video to date is a video where I make chewing tobacco out of tobacco that I grew on my homestead. That video has over 7,000 views right now. During this time is when I decided to take up blacksmithing. I was already doing everything else, so I may as well try that one out too. I'm not a master blacksmith by no means, but I'm very proud of the things I made. I think they turned out pretty nice. Once my skills were sufficiently developed, I felt that my work was finally good enough to sell. So we put a lot of thought into it, and we decided that the best way to do that would be to enter a craft fair. The thought of doing that was very intimidating because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if anybody was going to buy anything. I didn't know if we were going to be laughed out of the building. But I grit my teeth and we went through with it. Our first craft fair we attended was this year at Center 200, the big one. And after all the worrying I did and stress that I had over the situation, the response that we got completely blew me away. I was not expecting that. Everyone was so into it. It was fantastic. By the second day, I sold most of my stock. I actually had to go home and work late that night and get up early the next day to make more, to make sure that I didn't run out. It was a huge confidence boost for me. Since then, I've been making stock like crazy, and we've been tracking down and entering our names into every craft fair that we could find. The idea of making a living as a blacksmith is not something I really thought was possible, especially here in Cape Breton. But the craft fairs proved me wrong. It is a very real possibility. During the craft fair at Center 200, we met Jordan, who happened to be very impressed with my work, and he invited us to be part of the craft fair at the port. During that craft fair, we discussed the possibility of opening up a shop at the port itself where I'll sell goods to the tourists and perform demonstrations like this one. The idea of having a job where I get to be my own boss and get to do something that I love to do, that's the ultimate dream for me. That's the ultimate dream for anybody, I would imagine. I would feel very fortunate if this actually happened. I am so motivated towards this goal right now, I can't even explain it to you. As soon as it was mentioned, my mind went wild with the possibilities. Just thinking about what it would look like. I can't tell you exactly what it's going to look like when it's done, because I don't even know that. But I can give you some examples of where I get my inspiration from. My number one inspiration of all is something that played a huge influence on my entire life, and that's Cape Breton mining culture. That is 100% my roots. This was all driven into me from a very young age. These are the type of men I looked up to when I was a kid. I grew up listening to stories of Davis Day and the disaster at number 26. These stories may as well be legends to me. I remember school field trips going to the Miners Museum in Glace Bay and getting to go down in the mine. That was like Disneyland to me. So aesthetically, this is going to be a huge influence for what I do at the port. It's all black metal and old wood. I love the look of it. Another huge inspiration for me is Norse and Scandinavian Viking culture. I find it very interesting how tribal they are in their beliefs, but yet how industrious they are with their technology. More specifically with their boat building. This plays a huge role in the types of things that I blacksmith, and you can expect it to play a huge role in the aesthetics of what I do at the port. Expect to see a lot of antlers and furs. Another huge influence for me is old school pioneer culture. Living off land in a log cabin, carving a place in the wilderness. This was the path that I was on that led me to blacksmithing in the first place. Now, if you take these elements and you combine them together, you would end up with something that wouldn't look out of place if it were in a Lord of the Rings movie. And that's also a huge influence of mine. Just from the attention to detail and the amount of lore that gives the stories its depth. Now that I have all that out of the way, I'll let you know what exactly I would need to make this happen. I just want to say I absolutely love the look of the little shanties. I think they're awesome with the wood shingles and whatnot. If I had my say, I would prefer if the one I was in was painted brown. It would fit better with the aesthetic I'm going for. The interior dimensions is actually not that important to me. I could make any space work for my needs. It's the exterior that I would need a little bit of extra space. I would need an open lean-to on one side, very simple in design, almost like a rolled out awning on a house, only supported by two legs. The reason I would need this is so that I could do my blacksmithing demonstrations out of the weather, and being in the shade makes it a little easier to see the color of the metal. For the ground, I would suggest maybe some patio stones, so that if I happen to drop a hot piece of metal, it wouldn't burn the asphalt. The amount of space I would need to do demonstrations isn't very much. This whole lean-to could be about 8 feet by 8 feet, and that would be very sufficient. After all, I would be doing most of my forging in my home forge. This space would be specifically reserved just for doing demonstrations, and not so much for production. And I should mention that I already have all the equipment I would need to make this happen. The only thing I need from you guys is the space to do it in. And that just about sums everything up. If you happen to have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. I'm really looking forward to working with you guys. I really hope we can make this happen. Thank you very much for watching my video.